everyone, Loremaster of Sotek here, back with another video, and today's is an incredibly exciting topic because it is the roster reveal for Tzeentch, which is something I think a lot of us have been looking forward to. Let's not waste any time, dive straight into the article. I apologize, it's so weirdly zoomed out. I'm having some weird PC issues, but we'll make do. I can read it, so I'll just read it so y'all can hear it at the very least, and we'll go through. So, it is time to bring more knowledge into the world and unveil some secrets of the Chaos realms. So it is decreed by the great deceiver, the god of magic, and thus it shall be. Welcome to the roster reveal for Zinch, the demons of knowledge, betrayal, and magic. Like our other Chaos factions, it's demon heavy, with a focus on what makes this god special. So do check out our summaries of the Zinch campaign mechanics for more. As always, the below represents a game in progress. We're moving steadily towards our planned release in early 2022, but there's still plenty of tweaking to do. We want to hear what you think, but don't get bogged down by any numbers specifics. Plenty of balancing due as of yet. So, you know, keep telling them, folks. Let's keep on that. We want unique looking warriors. You know, give those Zinch boys some unique helmets and shoulder pads or something, and give them marks of Zinch instead of marks of Undivided. All right, so first up, the starting legendary lord is Kairos Fateweaver. Kairos can see things that are hidden even to Zinch. His right head sees possible futures as clear as day. No scheme is hidden from its sight, and the infinite possibilities of tomorrow crystallize into irrefutable fact. Kairos' left head sees the past without petty colorations of perspective and bias. Valuable as his vision is, it comes with a heavy cost. Most of Kairos' head are blind to the present. He cannot see time as it passes, only events that are to come or whose time has already lapsed. Kairos as an entity has unsurpassed magical knowledge and capability. While unpredictable and quite mad, he is a force to be reckoned with on the battlefield, unleashing all manner of powers to crush his enemies. He naturally combines well with the forces around him to provide supporting fire and heavy melee damage. He, along with every other unit in the Zinch army, also comes with Barrier. Barrier is a damage shield that regenerates quickly if you are outside of combat and protects against all forms of damage, acting as effectively another health bar. It makes hit and run tactics with flyers, plenty of those you'll notice in this army, and cavalry particularly effective, along with allowing you to cycle out your standard melee troops if applicable. It's also another area that can be buffed and altered through technology and skills, most of which are very powerful. So, that I actually think is really, really cool and exciting. Zinch is kind of the big hit-and-run faction, because he's got basically bonus health that he can afford to lose. As long as he can pull back out of combat, he can go heal it up. So, already I could just feel all the multiplayer guys who love cycle charging drooling. Unique skills and abilities for Kairos Fateweaver. Fragments of Magic. This allows Kairos to acquire and equip fragments of other spell lores, giving him access to several spells from that lore. He can only have one fragment equipped at a time. So it sounds like with Kairos, in campaign at least, you're going to be assigning him a spell fragment and probably some kind of unique slot he has, or a lore fragment. And whatever lore fragment he has gives him a selection of spells from whatever that lore is, which is pretty exciting. The Staff of Tomorrow. Kairos' powerful artifact allows him to reduce all his spell cooldowns in an instant. So I'm guessing that's an active button you click. That's probably an active ability. You click it and it instantly refreshes all of your spells, I would have to guess. Gaze of Fate. Paralyze a unit to prevent its movement and vastly drop their melee attack. Oh, that's gross. Okay, so Kairos has a root ability. He has a net. So he's able to point at a unit, freeze it in place, and lower their melee attack. Delightful. Moving on. And this does confirm my theory. The article does confirm my theory that the Age of Sigmar, Daemons of Tzeentch, will be acting as the Exalted Lord of Change, which is a Lord type, and then the Old Lord of Change, which is the one from Total War Warhammer 1, like Sartorial. Those are the basic Lords of Change, which I guess kind of further goes to show how much of a punk Sartorial is. That he's not even an Exalted. He's just a regular guy that got sent out to screw with Archaon a little bit. Alright, so we got the Exalted Lords of Change. A Lord of Change is hideously unpredictable and manipulative, Behind its gaze lies a curious and wreckful mind, deeply intelligent yet as uncaring of consequence as it is fascinated by it. It's like a child playing upon some gigantic anthill, poking with a stick at its inhabitants and laughing at the hopeless antics of their defense. Nothing pleases him more to see the world broken and made anew, to redirect the course of a life, or even history itself, spilling hope upon the ground while raising the ambition of others up to an unexpected pinnacle of power. As well as being fierce melee combatants, Lords of Change are powerful spellcasters. Casting spells in a Tzeentch army fuels your ability to call upon the powers of the god of magic, special army abilities that are charged by the winds of magic seeing use. These are powerful effects that can blitz enemies from the field with ease, and with every lord and plenty of heroes and even some standard units having access to spells are easy to exploit. That's a really cool idea, and also gives Tzeentch like a good incentive to have multiple wizards on the battlefield. So whenever you cast a spell, the winds of magic that you use for that spell is also converted to filling up your this meter that you have for the god of magic. And so the more spells you cast, the more this meter builds up, and apparently it will unlock and allow you to unleash army abilities upon the battlefield, which is really clever. Tzeentch's spellcasters specialize in either the lore of metal, with all the spells you're used to, and the lore of Zinch, which includes the following spells: Blue Fire of Tzeentch, Pink Fire of Tzeentch, Treason of Tzeentch, Glean Magic, Zinch's Firestorm, and the Infernal Gateway. The Infernal Gateway. I still have nightmares about facing that spell on tabletop. This is a purely offensive school of magic, with 4 spells that deal direct damage and the others debuffing enemies to their doom. We've shown off a selection of the new spell lords we have coming in Total War Warhammer 3, and we'll actually be detailing these schools and their spells very soon. So we will have a new Lords of Magic article coming in the future. The second lord for Tzeentch are the Heralds of Tzeentch. As the magically fashioned slaves of Tzeentch, horrors are considered automatons to be expended as part of a carefully wrought plan. Should a servant of greater power be required, Tzeentch will create a herald, a more stable type of horror. Such demons have enough consciousness to direct others of their kind without constant guidance from a Lord of Change, directing furious sorcery against Tzeentch's enemies. To mount up, a screamer must be transmuted into a new form before it can be safely used. These discs of Tzeentch, as they're known, retain the flattened and manta-like shape of the screamer, but their magical bodies are transformed into unlikely shapes and aspects as part of the binding ritual. Heralds have little patience at the best of times, and none at all in training screamers and discs. They therefore consider borrowing a chariot from an exalted flamer to be entirely in keeping with their status. Such a feat requires great cunning indeed if the herald in question wishes to escape the flamer's wrath. However, all these trials and tribulations seem as naught once the herald is free to swoop and dive across the battlefield on his new possession, cackling madly as he unleashes his fearsome sorceries upon the enemies of his dark god. Spell lords available. The spell lords available for the Herald of Tzeentch are Metal or Zinch, which is standard for Tzeentch. For mounts, he can either ride on a disc of Tzeentch, or you can upgrade him to ride a burning chariot. Next up are the heroes. There are 2 heroes for Tzeentch. The first is the Cultist of Tzeentch, which are very, very cool looking characters. Tzeentchian cultists are a unique group. Clandestine worship of their god is more common, especially in Cathay, than for other gods, due to his secretive and manipulative nature. At the same time, interpreting their god's wishes is more challenging than for straightforward Khorne or Slaanesh, where copious amounts of bodily fluids are usually enough. Strange masks, complicated rituals, and endless scheming and plotting mark the cultists. If anything, a chance to do glory of their lord on a simple battlefield is much preferred. Growing their cults and spreading the ways of Tzeentch is massively important, however. His schemes require sacrifices, blackmail, bribes, and most of all, knowledge. A cultist may work for years as part of a machine he barely understands, even being convinced of his own failure and expecting the mutations that come with it when the scheme succeeds on a wider scale that he cannot understand. They have unique access within the armies of Tzeentch to the lore of fire, making them a useful option for further battlefield damage and control. As they grow in power, they can also learn to summon demons direct from the Chaos Realms, including great Lords of Change themselves. While their time on the battlefield will be limited, their power is not. The lore they have is the lore of fire, and they can ride chaos steeds. So, these guys are super interesting. First, we see that Tzeentch apparently is going to have a lot of summons, because this guy could summon lords. This guy can summon greater demons onto the battlefield in addition to just regular demonic units. So definitely a very, very nice support character. You are almost assuredly never probably going to see him in close combat if you're playing your cards right, but based on the fact that he has the lore of fire and also brings summons to the table, yeah, that's going to be a really solid character, I think. The other hero is the Iridescent Horror. Pink horrors, collected magic as they are, can sometimes be granted capabilities beyond the norm, and the authority and sanity that comes with it. These iridescent horrors are masters of the magical arts and powerful combatants, proving the greater of even some champions. Their deadly skills are enhanced further with locust magics that allow them to greatly buff their allies at a moment's notice, or summon more through portals to the Chaos Realms. Once again, more summoning. So, and we also have confirmation that it sounds like the heroes are going to be bringing loci into the battlefield for the various gods. So, with the Iridescent Horror, we have it sounds like the Iridescent Horror is all about summoning more horrors onto the battlefield, whereas the Cultist is probably going to be more for summoning Lords of Change and other higher tier demons, maybe. So, like Flamers or Screamers. But, really solid 2 heroes. Looks like that's pretty much going to be standard, I'm guessing, for all of the Dark Gods, is that you're going to have a cultist for each of them, and then they're going to have whatever the unit champion of their basic troop is. So, for instance, for Khorne, the unit champion of the Bloodletter was upgraded to be the new hero type. Same thing for the Pink Horrors. It's probably going to be the same thing for Plague Bearers, and same thing for Demonettes. He can also take the lores of Metal or Tzeentch, and can also ride a Disc of Tzeentch or a Burning Chariot. Awesome. Great. Alright, getting on to the infantry units. First up is the Tzeentch Infantry, the Blue Horrors of Tzeentch. Blue Horrors are sullen and malicious, like evil-tempered children, and sneer and grumble their way through a battle. Once spawned, they add a deeper whining note to the incessant chortling of the group as they attempt to grapple with enemies and squeeze the life from them before inevitably wandering off in search of fresh entertainment. Notable characteristics. While classed as melee troops, as that's where their proficiency lies, Blue Horrors are capable of vomiting up magical fire. This gives them an impressive first punch on a charging enemy. So as we've seen in the trailers, they have the ability to throw fireballs at people. It sounds like the Blue Horrors fireballs are maybe less of like a constant barrage type of shooting and more of, there's a word for it, but I forget what it is, but the kind of shooting that you're supposed to, kind of like skink javelins. It's a kind of shooting that has very limited ammo, and it's meant for you to throw in somebody's face before you then charge. All demons suffer from instability when their morale is low, making them begin to disintegrate on the spot rather than flee from battle. So, you know, they're very similar undead. Despite their pathetic nature when compared to more senior demons, Blue Horrors are still a fearful sight for mortals in the world, gibbering mouths and flailing deadly limbs. So, all demons cause fear. Yeah, pretty standard. Forsaken of Tzeentch. Many warriors of chaos find that the rewards of the gods turn out to be more closely resembled to afflictions than blessings. In time, many Forsaken lose any capacity for rational thought, setting aside sophisticated weaponry in favor of jagged teeth and twisted claws. They have no intelligence glinting within their black eyes, for their minds churn with nothing more than thoughts of killing and devouring everything they catch. These atavistic warriors often bear ever-twisting assortments of mutations, including writhing tentacles, chitinous claws, extra heads, and hairy, graspy limbs that push out through their armor. Notable characteristics. One of the very few dedicated melee-only ground units in Tzeentch's roster, and vital for holding early battles in campaign. The madness of the Chaos Realms and the infection of their bodies makes Forsaken immune to psychology, but of course they also have Frenzy. I wonder if they're actually going to have legit immune to psych in addition to Frenzy, or if it's just that they have Frenzy which makes them immune to psych, but once they lose their Frenzy, they're no longer immune to psych. Because I think the Forsaken in Total War Warhammer 2, or Total War Warhammer 1 and 2, I think they only have Frenzy, not immune to psych. I actually think it'd be kind of a nice buff if they got regular immune to psych. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that's correct. Given their high armor compared to almost everything else on the Tzeentch roster, you're going to get a lot of use out of Forsaken, depending on your playstyle. Tzeentch Missile Infantry, Pink Horrors of Tzeentch. Pink horrors are identified by luminescent pink skin and their squeals of high-pitched laughter. Spellcasting fills them with joy, and they emit a special merriment as eldritch energy screeches from their upraised hands. When wounded, a pink horror exhales a final lunatic cackle before rapidly decomposing. Notable characteristics. Vomiting, burning hellfire spells magical fiery doom for most other low-tier units. Also boasts greater melee capabilities than their blue cousins, making them a useful hybrid unit. Gibbering delighted buffoons, which I personally feel a distinct connection with. I think most of us can. So, interesting. It doesn't look like horrors split. Or at least they don't at the... Maybe that's a campaign upgrade, but I'm not seeing anything in here about pink horrors splitting into blue horrors. But it sounds like you will be able to summon lots of horrors or additional units through your heroes. I wonder if that is the plan. Kind of a weird choice. Seeing as it's a feature that's already like so normal in the game, I'm kind of shocked not to see that pink horrors split into blue horrors when they die. I don't know how I feel about that. Maybe they just forgot to include it, but it really feels like they would not have. I don't know if I'm a fan of that change. Making it where it's tied to your characters instead. But I don't know, at the same time, it's like you're able to take blue horrors as a separate unit. I don't know. I'm gonna have to think on that. I don't know how I feel about that. Next up are exalted pink horrors of Tzeentch. Pink horrors that have proven sufficiently powerful, cunning, or mad and survive many battles, not to mention the raucous random happenings of their home dimension, may become exalted. They wear golden trappings and consider themselves first among the lower servants of Tzeentch. Quite how much actual respect or even knowledge other higher demons are paying to them is unknown. The ever higher pitch of their excited squeals means at least they're having a good time. Notable characteristics. A further upgrade in all forms over pink horrors. Their concentrated warp fire will outdamage even the celestial dragon crossbows of Grand Cathay, and they delight at magic and desire to see it increases. Winds of magic recharge rate for the army, stacking with each unit. Okay, so these guys are actually super good. So not only is their warp fire shooting attack the strongest in the army, and it seems like Tzeentch has crazy amounts of powerful shooting, but also this unit just being on the battlefield increases the rates at which your Winds of Magic recharges. And it stacks for each unit. That is really, really cool. I like that. That's good. Good. Tzeentchian Cavalry and Chariots. Chaos Knights of Tzeentch. Knights of Tzeentch are feared throughout the old world and beyond as merciless butchers capable of turning the course of battle with a single charge. They are towering brutes atop immensely powerful chaos steeds. Rider and mount clad in thickest plate, each section of armor crafted by a master demonsmith. A knight's greaves are jagged blades well suited to slicing through the flesh of an enemy. Even the frightful reputation of the Knights of Tzeentch is a weapon in its own right, crippling those who would stand against them for a single blow is struck. So, lack the massive charge impact of standard cavalry, but are far more effective in a pitched battle. So, they're not as good as on the charge as other heavy cav, but they're better at sticking in the fight and chopping people up. Heavily armored, very unlikely to flee, and fast to strike, causing fear with their thunderous charge. So, cause fear, hit hard, heavily armored, etc. The addition of a Zinch barrier to the power of the Chaos Knights makes them absolute tanks. Oh, yeah, that's a good point, actually. Wow, these guys are going to be really durable. Like, they're going to have the ridiculously good stats and armor of a regular Chaos Knight unit, but they also will have their barrier bonus health on top of that, so they can charge in, do a bunch of damage. If their barrier breaks and they're taking casualties, they can just run away, recharge their barrier out of combat, and then come charging back into combat. There are some interesting things I'm going to point out that are missing. Not in the sense of like, oh man, I'm sad this thing isn't there. Like, honestly, I think this roster has everything it needs. But there are some things I've seen in advertising that are not appearing in this roster, but we'll talk about that at the end. Next up are the Doom Knights of Tzeentch. Doom Knights are some of the most powerful mortals the world has ever seen, taming discs of Tzeentch and thus consider themselves superior even to other champions of chaos. Screeching through the air like few before them, they would be a wondrous sight to behold if they're coming to not only spell death and as is their namesake, Doom. There's no escape from the Doom Knights, and they show no mercy. Discs are the demonic steed of Zinch. These bizarre creations are neither demon nor construction, but a nightmarish blend of the two. Coruscating with mystical force, discs fly above the battlefield, skimming gently forwards on the winds of magic. The discs themselves are far from defenseless, lashing out around themselves with bolts of magical fire or manifesting whirling tentacles and ripping claws to slash at enemies that approach too close. Notable characteristics: flying shock cavalry that are more than a match for any foe. Trade their ground-born cavalry allies' armor and defense for vastly superior speed and power. The strongest melee-focused unit in Tzeentch's arsenal. So these are kind of Tzeentch's answer to the Skull Crushers, right? Except for it sounds like they're not as armored because the discs themselves are not terribly armored. Even though the Knights, the Doom Knights are. So it sounds like your armor is going to be a little bit reduced and you're not going to have as high as melee defense, but you're going to be very, very fast and they're probably going to hit like absolute trucks. Because if there's one thing Tzeentch actually does need in his roster, it's something that hits really, really hard in melee. So that's a really nice addition. I really hope we get this a tabletop unit, because this is not actually a tabletop unit, even in Age of Sigmar. And I would really like to see Doom Knights. Burning Chariots of Tzeentch. Burning Chariots of Tzeentch hurtle across the realm of chaos like incandescent meteors, bringing the great sorcerer's chosen emissaries to every corner of existence. As they blaze through the heavens of the mortal world, chariots of Tzeentch are commonly mistaken for comets, which are in turn interpreted as omens of great events and terrible wars. The discs and screamers which make up the bizarre chariot are drawn to raw magic like moths to a flame, and therefore to the exalted flamers, who exude tasty sorcery from every pore and wrinkle of their fungoid flesh. Notable characteristics. So the Burning Chariot of Tzeentch is a big chariot pulled by two screamers that has an exalted flamer standing in the back. The ranged firepower of an exalted flamer, as is mounted on the Burning Chariot, is the strongest anywhere in the world. It's even more powerful than siege weaponry. Oh lord! Such are the devastating energies being pulled from the warp by the exalted flamer, it will run out of power quickly, at which point it must contest with foes in melee. One thing that I've heard mentioned about the Exalted Flamers is that basically what this means is they have very, very little ammunition. So they are a unit that they're apparently one of the strongest, or one of the strongest hitting shooting attacks in the entire game, with all three games combined, but they have a very limited amount of shots. So it almost sounds like it's going to kind of be like hardcore Dragonfire on demand, but instead of it being an ability you activate and trigger, it's instead a shooting attack that has very limited ammunition. The combination of extremely fast, very powerful area attacks that can fly out of harm's way with ease is potent. So many flyers. Tzeentch monsters and beasts. Furies. Furies are yowling shards of malevolent energy, chaos in its purest form. With little in the way of intelligence, they are utterly subservient to the whims of the dark gods, and shift in aspect and power as the balance of the dark pantheon alters. They are easily subjugated by other demons whom they regard with a mix of dread and awe. Furies swarm at the edges of the battle, avoiding the thickest fighting if they can. Only when they sight a vulnerable victim do they descend, a wailing mass from which there can be no escape. Notable characteristics. These Furies trade the Frenzy of Khorne for the Barrier of Tzeentch. So here we kind of get like a good showcase of what's going to separate the two races. Is that Khorne, almost all of the units in his entire roster have the Frenzy mechanic, but Tzeentch does not have Frenzy, except for I think on the Forsaken, but pretty much everybody instead has the Barrier mechanic to make up for it. This makes them a far more effective as hit and run units, as a natural first step before Screamers and Doom Knights enter the fray. A cheap and effective unit for counterattacks and flanks, especially given their Vanguard deployment. Screamers of Tzeentch. Screamers are glimmering sky sharks that ride upon the winds of magic as a bird glides upon the breeze. They roam the tides of magic, preying upon the shadowed souls of mortal creatures, lone chaos furies, and other unfortunate magical ephemeria. Once the Screamers catch their doomed prey, it is torn to pieces in an eye blink. The gossamer shreds the soul stuff offered up as a gift to Tzeentch. So swift and agile are Screamers that they are highly sought after as steeds. However, their instinctive nature quickly proves calamitous should their controller's attention wander. Notable characteristics. Lightweight and unarmored, they're still very powerful once locked in melee combat, acting as Tzeentch's equivalent of early cavalry. Must be quickly moved in and out of combat to exploit your barrier mechanic and their charge bonuses to its fullest. So that's pretty cool. So they're definitely going to be a unit that you really want to be cycle charging with, because they're going to have problems otherwise. So really like that. The Spawn of Tzeentch. A creature visited by too many gifts of the dark gods inevitably succumbs to madness and mutation and becomes a chaos spawn. A once humanoid form that has sprouted and burst into obscene and monstrous anatomy, mutated almost beyond recognition. The eyes of the original creature peer out, a glint of its former personality, barely perceptible amidst the fleshy ruin. Chaos spawn are creatures of unspeakable horror, their twisted bodies sporting an impossible array of spines, eyes, and mouths. Notable characteristics. Another of Tzeentch's rare melee dedicated land units, though trading armor for power. They have a low model count, and the lack of defenses make this a tricky unit to hold the line with, but their powerful blows and pure ferocity make them a unique part of Tzeentch's roster. And of course, they have, they're unbreakable and everything, which is nice. Because I think they're gonna, because Spawn in a Chaos roster, they're still like physical creatures. They're not demons, per se. The regular Lord of Change. As might be expected of a creature born of pure magic and bound to the will of a master of sorcery, a Lord of Change is a potent spellcaster. The winds of magic obey his every command, allowing him to summon whirling tempests of change and mutation, blast the enemies of Tzeentch with bolts of multicolored fire, or unravel the mind of an enemy spellcaster from the inside. Although a Lord of Change elects to use magic and trickery to further its ends, he is still a fearsome fighter. Countless heroes have underestimated these strange creatures, thinking their wiry frames and fluttering wings fragile. Notable characteristics. A fully fledged spellcaster, so they do not use bound spells. They use your winds of magic, and they are actual wizards. They are not, they don't just have packaged bound spells like a lot of supposed wizard units do. Devastating single entity monster and flyer, all in one handy, affordable bird-shaped package. Could gain even more and more powerful spells from various campaign technologies. Will not survive toe-to-toe with the Bloodthirster, but is still plenty powerful enough to lay waste to most mortal formations. Next up, the Flamers of Tzeentch. Flamers are capable of a fair turn of speed, expelling gaseous ichor through the fungoid skirt at their base to bound and leap across the ground with considerable mischievous gusto. A flamer uses its blazing limbs to hurl bolts of magical flame at the foe. This is not fire in its truest sense, but a roiling cloud of chaos energy. It does not burn, but warps reality. A flamer's victim might briefly feel invigorated before collapsing into a writhing puddle of flesh. Notable characteristics. While not on the same level as the Exalted Flamers, ground-bound or mounted, standard Flamers still output a ludicrous amount of damage and operate as small groups rather than a solo individual. Much like Pink Horrors, will need careful placements to ensure maximum damage, but can annihilate when placed correctly. And as a later game powerful monster unit, can still hold their own in melee combat, especially after applying a few burns to their victims. They also apply Warp Fire in melee, making any support fire very effective, which they go into Warp Flame here in a second. Exalted Flamers of Tzeentch. A flamer uses its blazing limbs to hurl bolts of magical flame at the foe. This is not fire in its truest sense, but a roiling cloud of chaos energy. Yada yada yada. The Exalted Flamers are able to channel magical flame to a far greater extent than their lesser brethren, and can conjure up a great billowing sheets of warp magic, or hurl bolts of sorcerous change that make the very air sizzle with their passing. Characteristics. Likely to be the most powerful ranged attack on the battlefield, even when including siege weapons. They spray warp fire in a cone, making them deadly against formations or single entities. And this is where they specifically bring up warp fire, or warp flame. Warp flame is a debuff that increases the damage one takes from all fire attacks, strengthening almost the entire Tzeentchian army against the target, because Tzeentch has tons of fire. Low ammunition means they will inevitably end up in close combat. They don't excel, but they'll do alright. So I'm not exactly sure which units do Warp Flame and which units do regular fire, or if Warp Flame, because presumably Warp Flame does not also count as regular fire, but I'm sure that's something we'll get to see in the future. And last, but certainly not least, the Soul Grinder. When a demon's physical body is slain, he can surrender his true name to the Forge of Souls. The dark bargain thus sealed, his crippled essence is bound to a mighty warp metal hulk. Thus he is reborn as a Soul Grinder. A Soul Grinder's clanking tread shrieks the ground with every step, and it is devilishly fast for a creature its size, able to scuttle swift as a horse's gallop, or even faster should the scent of battle reach its nostrils. Piston-driven legs thud home with sickening force, crushing to bloody paste those beneath. Notable characteristics. Compared to the Soul Grinders in the other Dark God factions, Tzeentch's hurls a long-range anti-large set of magical spears at any targets, which we have actually seen in the Siege trailer they showed us, where you see it throwing those magical spears against the gate it's attacking. Magical attacks ensure maximum damage alongside armor piercing. Delightful, especially because going into Total War Warhammer 3, magic resistance, at least to my knowledge, is going away. Magic resistance isn't going to be a thing anymore. It's being replaced with spell resistance. So a lot of those units who have been confidently sitting there cackling whenever someone tries to hit them with magical damage are no longer going to have those protections. Magic damage will no longer be a debuff, at least if I understood that correctly. I'm curious if there will be any units that still have magic resistance, or if we're just purely going to spell resistance. Because magic resistance, as it exists in Total War Warhammer 1 and 2, did not exist in tabletop, with like 1 or 2 exceptions in the entire game. Spell resistance is what magic resistance is supposed to mean. So it doesn't protect you against magical attacks, it protects you against spells specifically. Anyway. So that's everything. That's all there is for Zinch today. It's looking pretty good. I will say I do notice some absences, and I'm curious why. The biggest thing that stands out to me is that all of the warriors are gone. So in some of the promotional footage we saw for Tzeentch, particularly like a lot of the screenshots, we saw images of regular Warriors of Chaos that were Tzeentch colors. They didn't have unique assets, but they were just regular. They were like, there was a Warrior of Chaos with a sword and a shield, so there was sword and board, and then there was like a couple of random guys that just had a one-handed sword and an empty hand. And a lot of people took a lot of issue with those characters, because they didn't like the way they looked, because they didn't have any unique assets. And they are not in the roster. they're gone. There are no Tzeentch Warriors of Chaos. They do not exist. They have Forsaken, they have Chaos Knights, and they have Chaos Spawn. And that's it. Those are the only units from the Warriors of Chaos roster. So I have no idea what happened there. I don't know if maybe they were planned to be in the roster, but due to the backlash from the community, they've just removed them. Or if maybe those are from like some of the generic, maybe those are from like some Warrior of Chaos Tzeentch factions that the AI controls or something. I don't really know what the deal is with that. They are noticeably absent. I will say, for me, this doesn't really change the critiques against the warriors that are in the roster. So like the Forsaken, the Chaos Knights, and the Doom Knights. I do really, really hope they go look at those models and change their helmets. Make sure that any undivided symbols they had on their shields or bodies are changed to Tzeentch symbols. And maybe like give them some unique pauldrons. It doesn't have to be crazy, but just like something so that you could just look at them instantly and be like, ah, yes, these are clearly Warriors of Tzeentch. But yeah, weirdly absent. I don't know what the deal is with that. I mean, it's not the first time we've seen something like that happen. Something that came to mind to me just a minute ago, or before I made this video, something I was thinking about was like how if you played Sartosa when the Vampire Coast came out, there was actually a third unit of Sartosan pirates, which had boarding axes, but the community hated them because they used greatsword animations despite the fact they were wielding axes, and it looked really weird it only looked weird if you were zoomed up, but there was a lot of criticism about those units, and instead of fixing them, so like, giving them axe animations, like from the White Lions or something, they just removed them from the game. I can't help but wonder if that's what happened here. I'm curious if they're going to say anything about it, or if they're just going to like quietly pretend like those units were never part of the roster. So super weird. However, overall, I think the roster looks absolutely fantastic. Demons of Tzeentch are looking really, really good. The entire roster is in. There is nothing missing. If you played 8th edition Warhammer Fantasy, literally every single thing you could take for the Demons of Tzeentch is in the game right at the start. So it's the exact same thing as Khorne, and kind of still leaves me in that space of like, I don't know where you go from here from like a DLC perspective. When it comes to like Lord packs, like I don't know what units you're supposed to add, unless they're just going to start like creating a bunch of stuff or digging into some Age of Sigmar things, which would be weird. Also, another thing is that the cultist is only a hero. I thought if you go back and watch the Enter the World of Tzeentch trailer, there's a clip where you see like a ton of cultists all next to each other on Chaos Steeds, and it looks like they're a unit of Chaos Knights. And when I saw that, I thought, oh shit, okay, so this is like a new knight unit. Like, the Chaos Knights of Tzeentch are not just heavily armored dudes, they're actually these weird cultist guys. Which was weird, but like, alright, I guess that's different. But no, that's not true. They're only a hero. And the Chaos Knights are traditional Chaos Knights, so the rider and the creature are both heavily armored. And they're the most heavily armored thing in the roster. So, and then if you go back and watch the unit spotlight for the Terracotta Sentinel, the Terracotta Sentinel has a clip where there's like several cultists charging him in melee, and then he like swings at him. So when I saw that clip, I once again thought, oh look, it's like a cultist infantry unit. Nope, just a group of heroes. So, weird stuff. I don't know if they did that to like purposefully mislead everyone, or because like what led to that, right? Or maybe they just thought they looked cool, so they just wanted to have a bunch of them in the footage because they looked really cool. So they were like, let's just throw a whole shitload of them in there because they look really good. Like, okay, I can respect that, but it feels like a weird decision, to be honest. So yeah, I don't know. Overall, like I'm confused because of some of the marketing material that has led up to this roster reveal. Being that like I feel like there were 4 or 5 units I was expecting to see that just don't exist. Now that I'm actually looking at the roster, but you know, the game is still in development, and I almost feel like that's why they say what they do up here at the top, which is they say, as always, the below represents a game in progress. We're moving steadily towards our plan, but there's still plenty of tweaking to do. So we do want to hear what you think, but don't get bogged down in any numbers specifics. Like they say we want to hear what you think, but don't get bogged down in any number specifics. But there are no numbers in this roster. Like there's no data, right? Like there's no like stats. It's literally just here's everything in the roster. So like they worded it weird, but I feel like what they're trying to say is like, don't worry about the fact that you don't see any of the like warrior units. Because, you know, stuff changes. So I don't know, weird, super weird. But I still think the roster looks really good. I still think it's gonna play just fine. Khorne has like virtually zero shooting and is all about just running into melee and punching people in the face constantly. And Tzeentch has very, very, very little hard melee, but has just a terrifying amount of shooting. And also has a just obscene amount of flyers and chariots. So, I mean, I think Tzeentch is going to be very, very strong. And definitely has a ridiculous amount of utility. So, I think it looks fine. I like I said, I just find the other stuff a little confusing. But overall, it looks great. I think it's just as good as the Khorne roster. I can easily and happily give this a 10 out of 10. I was really not expecting the Burning Chariot for a little bit. Like, I saw it in one of the trailers. But, like, I was totally ready for them to leave out some of the less common Tzeentch stuff, like the Burning Chariot, or, like, the horror characters on Burning Chariots. But no, they have literally everything. Like they got the discs and burning chariot mount for every single guy. We got a cultist. Everything's here. Literally everything. You know, it sounds like all the soul grinders are confirmed to be unique depending on which dark god they serve. So that's cool. Yeah, I have no complaints. So that's gonna be it for me today. Let me know what y'all think down in the description below. Is there anything that really catches y'all's attention? Is something particularly interesting, or concerning or exciting? Do let me know. Honestly, as long as they get the assets cleaned up for the Chaos Knights, the Doom Knights, and the Forsaken, I think Zinch is going to be spectacular. But as far as I'm concerned, this gets the same rating for the other factions, like or at the very least Khorne, like 10 out of 10 for me. It has everything I wanted. We got two different distinct versions of the Lords of Change, where the Exalted Lord is the new version, and the regular Lord is the old fantasy version, which I think was very clever, especially because of all of the Age of Sigmar demons. The Lord of Change is really the only one that doesn't have two dramatic weapon sets. Like a lot of the greater demons have very distinct weapon types. Like, you know, for Khorne, it's like, oh, okay, the regular one has the giant two-handed axe, and the exalted one has the one-handed axe and a whip. Like, you could tell the difference between the two of them from a very big distance. But with Tzeentch, you wouldn't be able to do that very well, because with Tzeentch, it's either a staff and a large dagger. It's really not a sword, it's more of a dagger, or a staff and a smaller staff. Like, they look very similar. It would be genuinely difficult to tell them apart, I think. So I think they made the right decision. And hey, good way to recycle those assets, right? Save some money. And Sartorial still looks really kick-ass, so the fact that you're going to see lots of Sartorials running around, great. So that's it for me. I hope you all enjoyed the video. I look forward to seeing y'all's reactions in the comment section. Let me know what you thought, and I'll see y'all next time. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.